So if you're new to the channel, my name is Charles Farmer. This is my 2018 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD with L5P Duramax in it. I bought the truck. I've had it going on 4 years now. September will be 4 years, and it's August now, so right at 4 years. I ran it over 3 years doing RV transport, and I did it for, I ran the truck. I actually bought the truck for what they call booming semis, where you have one semi pulling the other like a wrecker with a pickup up in the middle. That's what I bought the truck for, and that didn't last long at all. I think it might have lasted 6 weeks, and then I slipped right into RV transport. At the time, I wasn't planning on getting into RV transport. It was just I had the truck, I needed to work, so I called the company and went to work. So anyway, I put 501,000 miles on the truck, 15,000 and some change on the engine hours, and it idled a lot. I bought it to work, and that's what it did. I have beat the far out of this truck. It has been buried in the sand. It's been buried in the mud to the extent what the fire department had to winch it out. It had been loaded heavier than a 3/4 ton probably should ever be loaded, and went down the road just doing its own thing. I have absolutely no complaints with this truck, and at 500,000 miles, I made a comment on Facebook and said that I still wouldn't trade it for a brand new truck. And there was somebody got on there. I'm sure they were just being humorous or smart aleck, one or the other. I don't really care. I got a kick out of it either way. They said the engine lost oil pressure, and that's what's wrong with it now. That's why I'm not driving it now. At 501,000 miles. Now they said, well, I bet you. I said I still wouldn't trade it for a brand new truck, and they come back on Facebook and said, well, I bet you'd trade it for a new truck now, wouldn't you? And the answer to that is no. I still would not trade it for a new truck, because I'm scared of all this technology. That truck has too much technology, too many wires, and they have programmed me out of my own truck. So that is the newest truck I'll ever own, if I have any say so in it. So if I did get rid of this truck and buy a new truck, it will be a 15, 16 or older, before they did all the changing on the computer stuff and electronics, because I don't care about the rest of it. You know, I want something that's going to be cheap and easy to work on, that I can find parts for. And when you get back into the LMLs and stuff, there's a lot more parts laying around for those. The L5Ps, there's getting to be where there's getting to be plenty of parts at salvage yards and stuff, but I found out real quick whenever the turbo actuator went down how hard it was to get parts for them. Sat home 6 weeks waiting on a turbo actuator. So anyway, I'm trying not to ramble. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet. The truck did lose oil pressure. It still starts and runs fine. I'll start it up for you guys here in a little bit. Well, let's see. I'll start it up for you now if I can get the keys out of my pocket. But it starts and runs fine. It just has low oil pressure. And it does sometimes have a little funny sound to it. I mean, I don't know how well you guys can hear that, but it is running on one battery because it's got a shorted out battery in it. Well, wrong button. There we go. But 501,000 miles, it does start and run fine. It's just holding low oil pressure, and I think that the gear has come loose from the front of the oil pump, or the oil pump has just flat out come apart, but we won't know until I get a chance to tear it down. A ton of people have asked me why I haven't tore it down yet. When am I going to get around to tearing it down? Guys, I don't know. Life is kicking my butt right now, and I still got to pay the bills. So, you know, whenever I get a chance, as soon as I get a chance, I want to get the engine out. And the reason I'm pulling the engine out is because there's supposed to be two bolts in the bell housing that you got to take out to get the upper oil pan off. And I want the upper oil pan off so I can check the rods and mains and all that stuff. So, and if it looks good, I may put it back together, but there's a good possibility I'll just find me another motor. And the reason I say that is because I got 500 out of that one. If I can find another one with 100,000 or less on it, I feel like it should be 300,000 to 400,000 miles, and I get on it, and hopefully have no more issues out of it than I've had out of this one. Anyway, what I have here, I have a notebook, and when the truck hit 300,000 miles, I sat down and I went over with you guys everything that I had done to the truck from 0 to 300,000 miles. Every nut or bolt that's been turned, every set of windshield wipers been put on the truck, no matter how big or small, it's in this book. So what I'm going to try to do is get copies of this and put it online for you guys somewhere. That way you could look at it if you wanted to. You can see for yourself what I wrote if you can read my handwriting, you know. But I have no idea where to put it yet. But I'll figure that out. Anyway, at 300,000 miles, I got this book out and I read everything to you guys up to 300,000 miles. I'll leave a link to that video in the description of this video so I don't have to sit here and read all of it over again. And I'm going to pick up where I left off. This is not going to be oil changes, but I will tell you, on the oil changes, I filled it up with Rotella T4, not T6, but the non-synthetic T4. And the reason that I have a reason for doing that, whenever I bought the truck, I got some free oil changes with the dealership. I let them do the first 4 or 6 oil changes on it. And that's what they had been using. And I'm a pretty big stickler about you don't change whatever something has in it after it gets a significant amount of miles on it. You don't change. I don't change. You do what you want to. I don't change oils. If it's got Rotella T4 in it, it will always have Rotella T4 in it as long as I own it. If it has whatever. Now I do add 2 quarts of Lucas Oil Stabilizer and fill it up with T4. I check my front and rear differentials, the transfer case. I try to pull the plug on it and make sure it's topped off. I put a fuel filter, a screw-on transmission filter, an oil filter every 8 to 10,000 miles. And the reason I say 8 to 10,000 miles is if it's ready for an oil change and I'm in California, I would drive it back here, do the oil change, and then go back up and get me another load and go back out. Now, I'm not going to talk about the oil changes because it's just a given every 8 to 10,000 miles. I will have done an oil change, and things are in this book like windshield, when I had to have a windshield put in it. I'm probably not going to talk about that because it's not the truck's fault the windshield got busted by a rock going down the road. Wasn't nothing dramatic. Probably not going to talk about tires because I can talk about tires, but really over the last 200,000 miles there hasn't been a whole lot to tell. I did buy the Toyo Open Countries, and I only put 7,500 miles on them. Had to take them off the truck because they were shaking me to death. Come to find out that whenever they put them on, one of them had a broke belt. I'm not knocking Toyo Open Countries. I know a ton of guys that love them, but you can get anything nowadays. You don't know what you're buying no matter what name is on it, you know. And one of them had a broke belt. The next set of BF Goodrichs I get could have a broke belt as well. It's just, I think it had to do with the way they were stored, and tires were so freaking hard to get at the time I bought those Toyos. But anyway, like I said, I'm not hating on Toyos. There's a lot of people in the comments seem like they think I'm dogging them or putting them down. I just had a bad experience with mine. So, yeah, like I say, I'm gonna pick up at 300,000 miles, and we'll go from there. So at 311,000 miles, I changed the position 2 knock sensor, changed oil filter, and rotated tires. Now on these knock sensors, a lot of people have been, you know, they ask me how they come out. Both of mine came out really easy. Position 1, position 2, both came out really easy. I didn't even put heat on them. I just had to put some pressure on them. And just like you guys, I was a nervous wreck when I was doing it, worried something was going to round off or something, but they came out really easy. Position 1 is right behind the turbo. Position 2 is right under the passenger door there. And I put the onboard air on this truck, and I put my air tank right over the position 2 knock sensor, so it was a lot harder on this truck than what it would probably be on yours because I had to take all the onboard air off to get to the sensor. It says here at 308,000 miles I had to replace a number 5 injector connector. So I missed that. 308,000 miles, number 5 injector connector. 311,000 miles, position 2 knock sensor. And I did that at the same time I was doing a service. I got changed oil filter, fuel filter, rotate tires. I rotated tires every time I serviced the truck, every 8 to 10,000 miles. changed the Cannon air filter. I caught a lot of hate on that because people said that the environments we drive in, I shouldn't do that. I'm not recommending you get away from a OEM air filter. I just talked about what I did because I thought it was best for me. I liked being able to, when I come in and change my oil, I would pull one filter out, put another filter in. Then I would take the one that I took out and wash it and clean it up real good, oil it, put it back in the box, and the next time I come in for a service, I would take that filter that I oiled the last time, put in, wash the one that come out, and that way I kept it in rotation. And since 11/18 of 2021, it's now August of 2023, I have not bought an air filter. Now, that, like I say, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'll keep doing that when I get this truck back where I'm driving it every day, just because it's working for me. Let's see. At 328,000 miles, 328,261 on the miles, I had to replace the pinion bearings, pinion seal, and side carrier bearings in the rear end. And I'll try to put a picture up. The pinion bearing was completely, it was really bad. It was eat all to pieces. The side carrier bearings look pretty good. 336,569 miles, I replaced the coolant reservoir. The reason I did that was to get that pesky low coolant light off. And I tell you, whenever I did this one, I drained the coolant, I changed the coolant reservoir, and I filled the top part up with coolant, and the light has never came back on. I never did. Never ever to this day have I added coolant to that bottom overflow tank, because that's what it's an overflow tank. It doesn't matter. And that's my opinion. That's how I feel about that. Greasing the front end. I hear a lot of people talk about the front ends on these trucks are horrible. They don't hold up. They don't last, whatever, 501,000 miles. I grease the front end every other oil change. There are 9 grease fittings on the front, and I would have to show you. I don't want to try to tell you. There's upper ball joint, lower ball joint, outer tie rod ends would be 6, and then there's 3 on the steering components that I would have to show you. And they said that when I first bought the truck, they said you needed a 90-degree angle grease fitting to get on it. I never did. All I did was barely turn my wheels to the right a little bit, then I can get to all my grease fittings with a straight grease hose, So that's all on this page. The next thing was changing tires. Let's see. Service, and that's replace windshield. That's where I washed the radiator. I did a service and washed the radiator out. I did a video on that too. Let's see. All right, 396,308 miles. I replaced the number 7 injector. It went down just like it does when an injector connector goes bad, but I had already replaced the number 7 injector connector. That was the first one that ever failed on me. So in my head, I thought it's probably the injector. So what did I do? I borrow a buddy's truck. I go to the dealership and I buy an injector. I still got the old one in the toolbox. I kept it because I wanted a core if I ever needed one again. I get back, I put it in. I made it all the way across the parking lot. All the lights came back on. It started doing the same thing again on me. And I have one of the Amazon injector connector pigtails, whatever you want to call it, in the glove box. I pull right back over and put that on. Fixed the problem. Never had a problem with number 7 again after that. So I wasted my money on an injector. So I always start with the cheaper things first. If you're going to replace an injector, don't do it without replacing the connector. That's my personal opinion on that. 432,230 miles, I replaced the turbo actuator. If y'all remember that, that was an aggravating ordeal because I was off work for 6 weeks trying to get a turbo actuator. All right. I didn't write down if this was the set of BF Goodrich's that were on here, that are on there now or not. I'm pretty sure it is. I know it is. So I took it and had the to Monteith and Middlebury, and I had the had these tires put on. And I ran out to California and back twice, and when I came home to do my service, I was breaking wheel studs, taking them off. I don't know if their torque wrench was not calibrated right. I don't know what the deal was, but when I would go to take them off, one would be loose, the next one would be so tight I'd break it off. The next one would be loose, the next one so tight I'd break it off. So I'm not trying to call them out on anything, but I wasn't the first one that went there that had trouble. Like I say, I'm not knocking them. It could have been anything. Truck got nearly, at that point, had over 400,000 miles on it. All I'm saying is I never had a problem with breaking studs until the next rotation after they put my tires on. That goes on, has got a little bit to do with why the black wheels are on there. So anyway, like I said, I'm not saying don't go to Monteith and Middlebury, but I am saying I know multiple people that's had issues after going there. So just watch them, make sure they do your work right, and make sure if you have any troubles afterwards, make sure and call and let them know about it. I sure did. So after that, 447,580 miles, replaced manifold studs and gaskets, and 1 and 3 injector connector. Not because they were bad, but because I had everything taken off to get right to them. I had one of the manifold, the exhaust manifold studs had broken off, letting it squeal. So I replaced it, and the number 1 and 3 injector connector. Shortly after that, I had a problem with more wheel studs breaking. So I had to replace all the studs on rear driver's side wheel and replace all studs and lugs. So ever since then, I've had issues with lug nuts breaking. Even the ones that I've changed and put new in, I don't know what the deal is, but it's never been the same since those broke off on me and I had to change them. Whenever I put these wheels on, the lug nuts don't seem to stay tight for me. I don't know if I may have the wrong nuts with the wrong wheels or what the deal is with that, but whatever reason, I can't keep them tight. So every time I stop anywhere, that's another thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, leave in the comments, but the torque, the lug nut torque on that truck is supposed to be 140 foot-pounds of torque. I set my torque wrench on 100 foot-pounds, just so I know if I got a loose one. And I'm breaking wheel studs at 100 foot-pounds. I don't understand that. So, that's something that after I get the oil pressure back up, that's the next issue that I'm gonna have to deal with. 451,000 miles. I changed the original brake pads on the front, and I had to do all of the studs on the other side, on the rear. Changed headlights at 457,000 miles. And I've got the original headlights in that truck. I would love to find something better, but everything I bought so far has been worse. All the LEDs, yeah. If I'm gonna do anything else, I'm gonna buy the complete housings to change out. At 486,114 miles, I got noticing that I had a tire leaking down. I took it to the tire shop, had them find the leak, and it was actually a cracked wheel, cracked in 2 places. No idea on that. The roads, like coming across Arizona on I-40, yeah, I've stopped and changed, ain't no telling how many other people's tires on the way across through there before they hit those holes and break a belt and tire swells up and all that stuff. So I did replace the wheels at 486,114 miles. At 486,043 miles, I had to replace the number 1 knock sensor again. That was the second knock sensor that had been put on the truck. And my buddy Taylor, I met him when you guys started sending me messages, and we got talking, became good friends, and he lived in California, and he actually brought it to me in Barstow in the middle of the night, man. One thing I'll say about this YouTube channel, I've met some of the best people through YouTube that I didn't realize that many people, good people, still existed in the world. But he brought me a standard ignition, part number NOX006. I'll leave that in the description as well. You can order those off Amazon. You can order them from off Amazon, and you can order them off of at O'Reilly's or somewhere like that. It's another service. 493,840 miles. The transmission cooler lines rubbed a hole right behind the front bumper right here. I did a video on that, replacing those transmission cooler lines. And when I got in there and I was replacing those, I found a hole in the AC condenser. So I went ahead and replaced the AC condenser, and I've been working on making, I recorded a video on replacing the AC condenser. And I was worried whenever I did it that I was going to have to go in and pull the radiator and the air-to-air and all that stuff. You don't. You pull the grill out and pull the, I don't know what you call it, got the hood latch in it, that support there. Pull it out, the piece that the grill snaps into, and then you can take the bolts off and pull the AC condenser right out the front. It's not a very big job at all. Well, not compared to some of the other stuff I've done. It's not that bad, and I'll try to have that video out as soon as possible, but it just kicks my butt trying to edit it because I didn't do a very good job. So anyway, that's it. The next thing that happened is 510,000 miles, or 501,000 miles, she lost oil pressure. And for you that don't know, I was pulling a fifth wheel across Flagstaff, and I'm riding along, and normally when I would start off a big hill, I'd leave the cruise set. I think I had the cruise set on 45 or 50 miles an hour, and the engine brake on, tow haul on, and whenever the speed would start picking up, the truck would automatically downshift to the next lower gear. And usually when it downshifted one gear, I would take and pull it out of automatic down into manual. Just pull the gear shifter down one click, and that would hold it where it couldn't downshift anymore, and everything would go right on along. I did that ever since I had the truck. Never had an issue. The engine brake would still work pretty good, but it wouldn't rev the engine way up, because I can't stand when it, I know there are people say it can handle it, but I just don't like the sound of it revving that high up. So I would do that, but that morning I was on the phone and I wasn't thinking, and I heard it downshift, and I was reaching for the gear shifter, and it's like it dropped 2 gears. It didn't drop one. It shot the RPMs way up, way higher than what they'd ever been or what I wanted them. And I reached up and pushed it, reached up and turned the tow haul and the engine brake off and let it shift back up. But as it shifted back up, the oil pressure went down, the dinger come on. That's where all my issues started. And I got it to the bottom of the hill, pulled over, got out, checked everything out. Truck sounded perfect. The only thing is the oil pressure dinger was going. I thought it was a sending unit. Hopefully it was a sending unit. So I called every mechanic that I know, and they said it's probably just a sending unit. If it's running that good, it sounds that good, and it ain't knocking, and you've been going that far, you're probably good to drive it on down to the next safe spot, because I was literally on the side of the road. So I crawled around under the truck, didn't see any oil dripping. There was no oil outside of the motor. I had to drive it 16 more miles down the road to get to a safe place right there at Seligman, Arizona. I get off the exit, pulled in, shut it off, and I found someone. It was a couple of days later, but I found someone to bring me an oil pressure sending unit. And I screwed it in, fired it up, same deal, and this time it had a noise with it. It had like a supercharger gear whine, and it's got like a thud, 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 you know. And it doesn't, to me, it doesn't sound like a rod. It definitely doesn't sound like a rod knocking. I've heard plenty of those, but I am worried that it hurts something in the bottom end. I'm not interested in putting, everybody said we just stick an oil pump in. It's not that easy on this truck, you know. From what there's no videos that I've seen on YouTube about it. I've seen some on the older Duramaxes, but not an L5P. But the front cover's got to come off, and the oil pan would be very nice to get it off. But I wouldn't drive this truck. Even if I had brand new oil pump in it right now, I still want to see the rod and main bearings before I drive it down the road. And if none of those are spent or damaged, then maybe I'll put it back together like it is. But I really think I'm going to wind up putting a different engine in it. Just for my peace of mind. Because everything on that engine has 500,000 miles. And at this point it was running low oil pressure. So I don't really want to chance that. Now, I did a live video right after I got it home and I cut the oil filter open. And the oil filter's sitting right here. But when I cut it open and looked inside, there was little brass looking copper flakes all inside the oil filter, and that makes me feel pretty much so like a bushing or something has went down, and those little brass flakes or copper flakes are all through my engine now. So that's another reason I want the engine completely taken out, taken apart, cleaned out, cleaned up, see what all's going on inside of it. And if I'm able to put it back together and run it, I would, as long as everything looked extremely good. But I still feel like chances are I would put it back together. And I thought about overhauling, just going ahead and completely rebuilding that engine. But to get a crate motor, a long block, is $10,000. You can find them in salvage yards all over the country for anywhere from $6,500 to $12,000. Or I could get a truck off Copart, about $12,000, $12, $13, $14,000, and that's the way I'd rather go, because then I got to spare everything. I have a spare differential, spare front differential, all the emission stuff, and that seems to me to be the way to go. But if someone had the issue that I have right now, and they were to run down the road and just put it in a ditch because they didn't want to pay for an engine, that stuff happens. And if I bought a truck and spent that kind of money on it and got into a situation like that where I spent all that money and I still don't have my truck running, I'd be in a mess. So another thing I got after the last video, I guess people thought I was withholding or holding out on them. Well, when's the first time you had to replace the DPF filter? It's still a stock DPF filter. There's been, if I didn't just say it between the first two videos, it's still stock on the truck. I didn't mention the back brakes because it's got the stock back brakes. I didn't mention the shocks because it's got the stock shocks. The truck's not giving any issues except for what I've read off. And to me, for 500,000 miles, the way I beat on this thing, that's not a lot of issues. I don't feel like personally, I don't feel like I could have gotten a better truck. And that's not me knocking Fords and Dodges. That's just saying that I couldn't have even bought another Chevrolet that I would have got that kind of service out of. And a lot of people say, well, you took really good care of it. I don't even think that's it. Because I did try to take good care of it as far as keeping it serviced, but I beat the far out of that truck. And completely stock. The engine's never been into, the transmission's never been into, the transfer case never been into, the rear end has been taken apart and put the side carrier bearings in the front and in the pinion bearings and seal in it, but still the same gears. I did take it to the tire store, and that's one thing I don't know, I didn't see it in there, but I'm sure it's in there. I took it to the tire store that's supposed to be very well known for doing a great job, and I took it to them and they said the whole front end is wore out, about to fall out from under the truck. And they wanted to order parts right there, and I told him, I said, well, you're not working on my truck. I said, I'll go home and get the parts, put it back together, we'll bring it back and get you guys to align it, but I want you to show me the bad parts. The guy walked off. He turned his nose up in the air like that was the biggest insult he had ever heard, and he walked off. So I got my truck and took it, after they finished rotating the tires, I took it to my tire shop, people I always deal with. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. I brought it home, jacked it up. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. The only thing that me and them both noticed, there's a slight bit of play in the gearbox. But other than that, the ball joints are tight, everything's tight. Now, I was hearing a noise when I would rotate my tires. I would spin that front driver's side wheel, and I would hear a noise. And I replaced the wheel bearing on that side, because that seemed to be what my thoughts was. And I called a couple buddies and they said, yeah, it's probably wheel bearing. Man, it's got 500,000 miles, right at 500,000 miles on it. You need to put both wheel bearings. And I agree. It need, just for, just for peace of mind, put both of them on it. But it was the middle of the night and I had to leave out the next day. I ran up to O'Reilly's and bought one of theirs and put on it, and it still got the same daggone noise and it didn't change a thing. So I think it's a bearing going that's got some noise in it on the inside of the differential on that driver's side. So that wheel bearing, when I pulled it out, I pulled that one off and I spun it in my hand and it smoothed the silk and it didn't make a noise. And I took the one I got from O'Reilly's, and it, if you would have walked me into a store, let me pick which one I want by picking up feeling of them and all, I would have definitely picked the one that had been on the truck for so long. I don't know if it's because it's well broken in or what, but, and with my experience on them, if the wheel bearing gets bad enough that you need one, a lot of times you'll get an ABS light. And I had none of that stuff, so I feel like I wasted my money on that wheel bearing. I should have just waited and replaced them both with AC Delcos. But anyway, guys, this video is turning into a little bit longer than what I want. So as far as upgrades and stuff that I wished I'd done to the truck earlier on, I put a steering wheel cover on the truck after I wore through the steering wheel. I should have done that the first day I bought it. The WeatherTech floor mats and the WeatherTech sunshades, no brainer all day long. I love both of them. The bed cover is awesome. I love it. The RDS fuel tank that's in the bed, love it. Had no issues since I put it in. The BMW companion fifth wheel, if I was going to buy another truck today and put a fifth wheel in it, that'd be definitely what I went with. Bayer Ultra Duty onboard air, love it. I mean, I had the pressure switch went bad and I changed it not long ago, and I've been putting the little automatic drain valves on the tank to keep the moisture out, and they seem to work. Never really figured out exactly how they work, but they seem to work. Since I put it on, I'm not getting near the moisture out of it. I can't remember the name of it. The mod that makes your turn signals flash for your parking lots, that's a definite something I really like. That makes me, I don't know why it doesn't do it from the factory. Boost Auto Parts, the parking lot mod, or mirror light mod. I'll get it right here in a minute. The auto sync, if you're not a techie person, you probably won't like it because it's a little aggravating to put it in, but if you're a techie person, I love the auto sync. It gives me a turn signal camera, so when I put my turn signal on, the camera comes on. It gives me the ability to start the truck and hit the panic button and the truck will go to high idle from right here. It lets me extend the remote starts out from 10 minutes to 20 minutes. It removed the speed limiter, so without tuning and deleting or any of that crap, it has no speed limiter on it. Well, it does. It's set at 500 miles an hour, so I mean that's basically the same as not having one. The airbags, if you're going to be towing heavy, I would definitely recommend. I got the Load Lifter 7500 XL airbags with a wireless one, and the AI box that you plug into any USB port and it turns the screen into a tablet. Love that thing. I go out and get in the truck now. I took all that stuff out when I parked it, and I go out and get in it now. It don't even seem like the same truck because my screensaver don't come up and my YouTube icon and all that stuff doesn't come up. So if you're thinking about one of the AI boxes, make sure you get one that'll work with your truck. If you have a newer truck, make sure it will work with wireless CarPlay, because that's a big hiccup. To the best of my knowledge, the one on my truck won't work on the newer trucks because mine has wired CarPlay. But if you get one that works with wireless CarPlay, it'll work on all of them. Anyway, I'll try to leave links to all this stuff in the description. These are the ones that I was talking about I had put on. Hell, they still got plenty of life left on them for a wore out front end. Those things, no cupping, no dipping, none of that on any of them. But for the truck to have 500,000 miles on it, she's in pretty good shape. I did go and have the exhaust turned out, so as soon as people see that, they like, oh yeah, it is deleted too. No, it's not deleted, it's just got a turnout on it. And I did that so I could put this mud flap on here. And I knocked one of my utility lights off. I'm not sure how that happened, but I didn't even notice it until I saw it was gone. So I think I ran over something in the road. But those lights do work excellent. Still love the bed cover. Y'all saw I did a review on it not long ago. Still love the hitch. Still love the airbags. Still love my sunshades, because even I go get any other vehicle around and it's so hot you can't even take a breath in it. Come out here and get in this one with the sunshades up, and it's still hot, don't get me wrong, but it's not near as bad, and it protects the dash and all that stuff. So let's see, steering wheel's right in the way. Yep. And then if I start it up, come over here and get into the auto sync menu, or try to, and go to powertrain data. See, engine oil pressure is at 24 pounds, 24 psi. That should be up around 60 on a cold start, and it is a cold start. Engine coolant level 111 degrees, so it should be way on up there on the oil pressure. And if you look back over here, and yes, she is a Canadian truck, so all the gauges are in kPa and Celsius and stuff like that, but it never bothered me. On a cold start, that should be way up. And then .53 psi at nearly 2,000 RPMs. It should be way higher than that. And I don't know if you guys heard that almost sound like a supercharger whine that came in when I idled it up. Anyway, no check engine lights. Everything great except for the low oil pressure, and it's got a little bit of a noise to it. The interior on the truck is held up really, really good. I mean, the back seats, I can't say much for them because they never get set in. You know, I was always in the front seat, and I was normally the only one in here. And the only thing that I can say for sure is this seat started having issues, but there's a lot of getting in and out of this truck. And the buttons, the color started rubbing off those, but you can get those on Amazon and stuff. The steering wheel got a big hole rubbed in the top of it right here where I always have my hand on it, so I put the cover on. I wished I'd done that from the get-go. Guys, I really hope y'all enjoyed this video or got something out of it. I will try to figure out where to put those records up as soon as I can, and hopefully you get something out of those too. Maybe that'll be something y'all want to see. And I appreciate all you guys for watching. I appreciate you clicking on the videos, subscribing, sharing, and all the stuff that you guys do for me. It really does make a difference. You guys have really stepped up, especially since I've been out of work, man. The watch time and all that stuff has really went up, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.